Now, election coverage from KNWA, your local election headquarters.
Good evening, I'm Lane Baker.
And I'm Jonathan Martinez. Welcome to our coverage of Election Night 2014. It is a huge night here in the natural state for politics, and we have a team of reporters fanned out across the state covering some of tonight's biggest races. There are several gaining a lot of attention across the nation, but the big news of the night, Asa Hutchinson becomes the 8th Republican governor for the state of Arkansas.
Arkansas, thank you very much.
Hutchinson giving his victory speech about a little after 9 o'clock tonight. In the race to succeed, Mike Beebe as Arkansas's next governor. There you heard from Hutchinson. With a big victory tonight, the numbers still rolling in, about 31% of the precincts. Asa Hutchinson with a large margin over Mike Ross. 54% of the votes with 245,000 as opposed to Mike Ross's 193,000 votes in this particular race.
And in a race that could help decide which party controls the U.S. Senate for the final 2 years of the Obama presidency, Republican Representative Tom Cotton projected to beat Mark Pryor. There you see the numbers, obviously 55% to 41% in that race tonight. So also a big difference in those numbers, too. I think people are expecting a little bit closer race.
To say the least, early on his victory speech came up at about 9:15, saying that the win came early and bigger than expected. Yeah. Moving on to a ballot initiative to increase Arkansas's minimum wage. Right there, you are looking at the very latest numbers. We are projecting folks voting for 272,000 with a 66% of the vote to a 34% against with 139,000 again projected to have won in this particular ballot issue number 5, raising the minimum wage here in the state of Arkansas to $8.50 by 2017. Again, that's going to be a sliding scale as it increases over the next couple of years.
A lot of excitement tonight on the Republican side of the aisle, beginning with people supporting Asa Hutchinson.
And again, we're going to go ahead and check in with KNWA's Justine Ward. She is live at the state capitol tonight at Hutchinson's headquarters. Justine, a lot of happy people there to be expected.
Good evening, Jonathan and Lane. Well, you can feel the energy in here, all of the positivity after a slew of Republican victories here in the natural state. Asa Hutchinson is actually off camera here. He's shaking hands and he's giving hugs, obviously very excited. And we heard from him earlier tonight. He says a new day for Arkansas starts tomorrow. And we are actually joined by Asa's campaign manager, J.R. Davis. Talk me through that new day starting tomorrow. How is Asa feeling?
Well, I think he's elated. It's been 18 months in the making. It's been a hard-fought campaign, but I think what we saw is that Asa had a concrete plan, the only candidate in the race to do so, and I think Arkansans took to that. It resonated with them, and that's what we saw tonight. So I think he's elated. It's been exciting. It's been a good night.
And obviously, this is not his first run for this seat. How big of a difference is this for him in this race if you compare this to the 2006 race?
Well, I think it's important for everybody to know that, Asa's never changed in any race. He's always been the conservative candidate. What's happened to Arkansas is that the state has turned more conservative. So what you see is what you get with Asa Hutchinson. That's what Arkansans know. That's what Arkansans are, I think have grown to love about him, and that's why he's now Governor-elect Asa Hutchinson.
What is next for Mr. Hutchinson? What is the first thing he will do?
I think Asa's talked about it a lot. It's jobs. Jobs are a big part of growing our economy, putting people to work, making Arkansas competitive by lowering taxes for middle-class families here in the state. But I think what's next immediately would be rest, I think, a little bit. It's just been a long campaign, but now we move to the transition side of things. But right now, like I said, 18 months, enjoy it. He's going to be with his family tonight. It's just going to be a good night. I'm excited for him, proud of him. So.
Well, thank you, JR. And as he said, Mr. Hutchinson will be spending tonight with his family tonight, celebrating those unofficial election results. Back to you in studio.
All right, Justine, thank you so much for that. Of course, we'll be checking in with Justine a bit later in the night. Right now, we're going to go ahead and turn to another big race for this evening, and that would be the U.S. Senate race. And again, the Republicans coming up victorious tonight with a victory for Tom Cotton. Take a listen.
This election was not so much about Mark Pryor or about me, but about you and about how we choose to govern and live as a people. Earlier tonight, I received a gracious call from Senator Pryor. I commend him for a spirited campaign, and along with every other Arkansan, I thank him and his family for their years of service to our wonderful state.
Stand by.
Our own Kyle Lamberger has been live at Cotton Campaign headquarters all day, joining us again from Little Rock tonight. Kyle, what's the feeling there?
Well, and you can see that it's still actually pretty festive here, and it has been really since the start. This race was called very early. The campaign party started around 7:30, 7 o'clock. The race was called just after 7:30, and so these people have been just celebrating the entire time. Cotton came up and gave his acceptance speech just after 9, shortly after receiving that call from Mark Pryor. He said one of those things the people have spoken, one of the things they're calling for is a more limited government. The other thing he said, he also talked about kind of trying to tamp down the sort of cynicism that has been popping up across the country by working together to affect positive change for Arkansans. He says he knows not every Arkansan voted for him, but he will work for all those Arkansans. Live in North Little Rock, I'm Kyle Lamberger. I'm going to send it back to you guys.
All right, Kyle, thank you so much. We're going to take a look at some of those other statewide races right now, starting with the race for Attorney General. You can see Republican Leslie Rutledge here with 55%, Nate Steele with 45% there, and Aaron Cash, the Libertarian, in this race at 5%. So Leslie Rutledge, the projected winner there tonight.
With a large margin. In the race for Lieutenant Governor, meantime, the Democrat John Burkhalter, as you can see, they're trailing Tim Griffin. Tim Griffin has about 256,000 votes in this race. Burkhalter with about 189,000, and Christopher Olson, the Libertarian, with just under 18,000. And finally, in the race for Secretary of State, the current Secretary of State there, as you can see, Republican Mark Martin leading handily over Susan Inman with about 58% of the votes. Susan Inman with about 38% of the votes. Meantime, Jacob Holloway accounting for about 4% in this race. Again, only 35% of the precincts reporting. However, with that wide margin right now, things look to be well on their way in several of these races. Joining us in the studio right now, our political analyst Hoyt Purvis. He's here to discuss back to that U.S. Senate race. Hoyt, I guess the big question right now is, did tonight turn out as folks thought it would?
Well, it turned out, I think, as people thought it would, but it turned out in a larger margin and a quicker decision than many people had expected. But this is a race, as you indicated. This is something that has national attention. Tom Cotton, particularly with the convincing nature of his victory, is going to be viewed as a rising star in the Republican Party. It's going to get a lot of attention.
He was talking about now it's going to be a matter of control of our government rather than being controlled by it, and that's something that he's repeated throughout his campaign. Give us a little bit more about what he means by that in this case.
Well, he chose to be a little more philosophical in his acceptance speech, a little more political than maybe some candidates would, but clearly he has an agenda, and his agenda is less government involvement in the lives of the American people. Now, how that's actually going to work in the final analysis remains to be seen, because Washington is still a place where gridlock is very likely to remain a factor.
Yeah, no matter who's in.
No matter who, exactly.
Maybe a big win for the Republicans, however, still.
You know, it's a big win for the Republicans. Indeed, you could say that in Arkansas, this is probably, I think we can safely say, the biggest night in history, in modern history, for the Republican Party. So this is a pretty consequential election.
All right, Hoyt, thank you so much for that insight. And again, we'll be checking in with Hoyt Purvis throughout the remainder of the night. Switching gears on the same topic, we're going over to Mark Pryor's campaign headquarters down in Little Rock. That is where we see Ashley Ketz tonight, who's been following this campaign as the results roll in as well. Ashley, good evening.
Hey guys, that's right. This party has wrapped up. We heard from Senator Pryor about an hour ago. He took to the podium to thank his supporters. He talked for about 5 minutes. When he walked in, the song Meet in the Middle was playing. And of course, that was alluding to his bipartisan efforts that he has been making in Washington the last 11 years. He thanked God. He called it his greatest privilege to serve in the Senate. He said there were some hard times. He acknowledged those 2 wars and, of course, the economy. But he said he still believed in Arkansas. He believed in America. Also, we saw a lot of hugs, a lot of tears tonight, a lot of Marks, we love you from the crowd tonight, a lot of amens. He said that he did call Congressman Tom Cotton to congratulate him and wish him the best. He said he would be praying for Tom Cotton as he takes his seat in the Senate come January. That is the latest, though, from here in Little Rock. Back to you.
All right, Ashley, thank you so much for that. And again, Mark Pryor also during his concession speech tonight saying that he will miss waking up to go to work for all Arkansans as well. Some 12 years that he served, hoping for a third term and not coming up successful.
And back here in Northwest Arkansas, obviously a lot of people out at those polling locations today in Washington and Benton counties.
As well, and we heard of some technical glitches out in Benton County. KNWA's Tevin Wooten is live from the Election Commission there with more tonight. Tevin, good evening.
Good evening, you guys. I'm going to start this broadcast with really great news. The technical glitch has been resolved per the election secretary of Benton County just moments ago. He said that they were able to find the patch or find the missing link. And let me explain to you what happened with that glitch. They were not able to process the precinct results or total the precinct results and distribute those by precinct. They were able to total election votes today as a whole from precincts, but not individually. So you were able to see a larger picture, but not the smaller picture. But that has then since been resolved, and they have also resolved some of the controlled chaos that was here just a few hours ago. A lot of people were coming in and out. There were a few inmates coming in with those ballot machines you see there along the walls, and also bringing in just some of the election equipment you can see there on the floor. And then over here now we've got the clerks or some workers verifying signatures from the clerk's office just to make sure they have the same amount reported signatures and people that checked in here. So it was a madhouse at once, but now it's all started to calm down. People here, the mood seems fairly happy. All the results and all the precincts results have been brought in, so we know that they're all here. They're all, for the most part, actually close to being done counted. I think there's still one ballot machine having a few glitches as far as printing out the results and closing that machine down. But other than that, everything looks great here in Benton County, live at the Benton County Election Commission headquarters. I'm Tevin Wooten for your local election headquarters.
Yeah, right, definitely. Tevin. You don't want to deal with glitches on election
looks
night.
like we stopped him in his tracks right there as well in the background. They've been working hard there. Thank you so much for that, Tevin. Obviously, a lot of disappointment from Mike Ross's supporters tonight. Here's a little bit about what he had to say earlier this evening.
I call upon all Arkansans, no matter your political party or philosophy, to set aside our political differences and put Arkansas first.
There you heard a little bit of Ross's concession speech tonight, saying that he still believes in Arkansas and he does want to make Arkansas a greater place. He was thrilled to be a part of this campaign and run a good race. We're going to go live now to Asa Hutchinson's opponent, Mike Ross. His headquarters is down in Little Rock.
And that's where we find our own Brittany Johnson tonight. Brittany been there all evening as well. And Brittany, what's the feeling right now? What are you seeing out there right now?
Well, the room is actually emptying out right now. If you can see behind us, most of the supporters have gone home for the evening, and Mike Ross actually just walked out maybe 3 or 4 minutes ago. After his concession speech around 9:20 up until 4 or 5 minutes ago, he was here. He was still hugging and thanking his supporters, thanking them for their support throughout this 19-month-long campaign. And of course, being here tonight, people wanted to see a different outcome. They were hopeful. They said they didn't really want to believe a lot of the poll numbers that were coming in early because they figured sometimes it's hard to tell those things. So I think people held on hope till the very end that he would be victorious tonight. But again, he conceded at about 9:20. He, of course, thanked his supporters, and he thanked former President Bill Clinton and Governor Mike Beebe for their support. He said they went to every corner of the state with him. He visited 17 cities over the past 55 hours, so they were busy trying to get every last vote that they could, but it wasn't enough. He tells us that he plans to go duck hunting over the weekend and to a football game on Thursday, now that he will finally have time to do those things. He also says that he has high hopes for the future of Arkansas and plans to be a part of this state having a greater future. We'll send it back to you all.
All right. Thank you so much, Brittany. Obviously wanting to spend a little time relaxing after all of those days and all those hours on the campaign trail. Can you imagine?
Yeah. And despite the loss, he did mention that this was an extraordinary exercise in democracy tonight. So again, thanking all of his supporters. Hey, as results continue to come in through the night, be sure to check out NWAHomepage.com. That's where we have the very latest numbers from across the state. We also have extended interviews and a whole lot more. Stay with us. Your election 2014 coverage continues after the break. For now, here's a closer look at some of the other races this evening.
Welcome back to our 2014 election coverage. We're going to talk about some of the U.S. House races now. We can project former Rogers Mayor Steve Womack has won a third term as United States Congressman representing the 3rd District. There was no Democrat running in this race, if you remember, and he beat out Libertarian Grant Brand for that position.
And in the race for Arkansas's 4th Congressional Districts, that is where Democrat James Lee Witt is trying to turn the seat blue. Right now, you can see he is trailing Bruce Westerman, the Republican, in this race by about 15 to 20,000 votes. It still remains relatively too close to call, with only about 26% of the precincts reporting. Benton County Republicans are watching the numbers roll in tonight for the party's headquarters in Bentonville, and Congressman Steve Womack stopped by to talk with supporters. He says even with the big wins predicted for the Republican candidates this evening, it'll be important for everyone from both sides of the aisle to work together to get things done on Capitol Hill.
We still have to govern, and we still have to work with a president from the opposing party who has some ideological differences with what we believe. It's going to be important that we put a lot of those issues aside, try to work together to try to move America in the right direction.
As we see the Senate tipping in favor of the Republicans, starting in January, it'll be the first time Republicans have actually controlled both the House and the Senate on Capitol Hill since the Democrats took control back in 2006. Now, that was amidst a lot of negative feelings toward the Bush administration over the Iraq War and even Hurricane Katrina. We are joined now by Professor Hoyt Purvis, our political analyst right now. And give us a sense of how we've gotten to this point over the last 8 years.
Well, the most obvious factor has been the declining support for President Obama. And that's evident very much here in Arkansas, but in other parts of the country as well. And so I really believe that although this is a big victory for Republicans, it is overall an indication that what people really want is change. And it's not necessarily identified with the political party so much as it is a kind of a general mood that people are not happy with the way things are going, want things to change.
And what do you think we're going to see as some of those changes because of this tonight?
Well, the public favors that dirty word in Washington, compromise, the one that's been a dirty word. And what's going to be interesting to see is if we can find some common ground, find some agreement, and whether the Republicans can produce. Now they're going to have a chance. But they're up against it in some ways because, of course, we've still got a Democratic president in the White House. In the Senate, it takes 60 votes to get anything really done there, or it can take 60 votes, and Republicans are not going to have 60 votes. So if anything's going to happen, there's going to have to be some compromise, have to be some agreement.
You are hearing Republicans tonight talking about that bipartisanship and that compromise. Do you think that they're kind of trying to come in with a kinder, gentler approach when it comes to...
That's certainly one way to look at it, and I think that's the way that most people would like to look at it.
Now, for the next 2 years, I mean, what can we really expect from a divided government? And as you just touched on it, can we still expect the gridlock and nothing, for that matter, getting done?
We're certainly going to see some gridlock. I mean, there's too much difference of views on some big issues. But I think the public really desires some change, some compromise, and perhaps that's going to lead to something actually happening.
All right. Now, obviously, we talked a lot about it earlier as far as the negative ads, and that being, I guess, the tone, the disdain for the current president from some of the candidates. I mean, and the results showing that tonight are indicating that. Yeah.
Again, clearly, I think what people want is change. I think the Republican Party was able to appeal to that desire for change, that strong motivation for change. Now will come the opportunity to see if change can really occur.
All right, Hoyt, thank you so much for that insight. And again, Hoyt will be with us throughout the remainder of the night to give us some more insight as the results continue to come in. In addition to the candidates, also several ballot initiatives going before voters today.
Yeah, issue 1 would give legislators the authority to have veto power over rules approved by state agencies within the executive branch. And supporters say legislators need to ensure agencies are following lawmakers' intentions, but opponents say the change would violate that separation between the executive and legislative branches of our government.
Arkansas legislators will try to become more involved in the nitty-gritty details of policy, which can be a good thing, but it might also be a problematic thing since they're not experts.
Now, issue number 2 would add tighter requirements on statewide petitions. And right now, if a petition has enough signatures by a certain date, petitioners get a 30-day extension to collect replacements for invalid or repeat signatures. Issue 2 would add a requirement that 75% of those original signatures be valid before any extension is given.
That might seem like not a big deal, but we can point out that 2 of the ballot measures that are on there for the people to vote on this time would not have qualified under this rule.
Now let's take a look at where those ballot initiatives stand as of right now tonight. It looks like, okay, issue number 1 that we were just discussing, 59% for so far tonight, that executive and legislative changes ballot that we were discussing, 59% for, 41% against tonight.
And certainly a wide enough margin there by almost 100,000 votes to go ahead and potentially
count that.
this.
Yeah, and then ballot issue 2, as we were just discussing as well, 53% to 47%, 53% for. Ballot issue 2 tonight for those petition changes.
And this one a little bit closer there.
Yeah, a little bit closer. So also going before those voters today, an initiative to extend term limits for members of the Arkansas General Assembly, and that initiative got a lot of attention from one group.
For more on that, we're going to go to Jacob Pinter now with the breakdown of this angle. Jacob?
Jonathan Lane, that's right. Issue 3 drawing a unique type of protest across the state. The group Vote Against Issue 3 taking a 10-foot tall Trojan horse all across the state for the past several months. And that Trojan horse based on the group's argument that lawmakers were trying to confuse voters into supporting ethics reforms that are included in Issue 3, like new rules for lobbying, and then sneaking in an extension to term limits as a Trojan horse. That extension would be significant. The current maximums are 3 terms in the House at 2 years per term, and in the Senate, 2 terms at 4 years per term. The ballot initiative would increase those limits to 16 years total in either chamber, meaning a limit for House terms could go from 3 to as many as 8 terms. Of course, at that point, you could no longer run for election in either the state House or the Senate. But certainly a substantial change from the way term limits operate now. Back to you at the desk.
All right, thank you so much, Jacob. We'll be checking back with you a little bit later as the show goes on as well. But let's check the latest results there from Issue 3. As Jacob was just talking about those term limits, 52% for right now, 48% against. And we're going to bring Hoyt Purvis back in here to discuss this with us. And you were saying today, some of these ballot initiatives, a lot of us discovering we're going to vote.
Slightly confusing.
Confusing, complicated, and that doesn't help them along with their cause.
I will confess that I'm surprised that some of these measures appear to be passing. Obviously, the one involving term limits and some lobbying restrictions are still very close. But again, the only thing I can conclude here is that people are ready for change, and these amendments, these issues represent change. And although they're very complicated and I think, quite frankly, not widely understood in most cases, my guess is here, and it's only a guess, is that people simply are ready for something different. They want change.
Okay, and also going back to minimum wage tonight, we are one of only 4 states where an increase to the minimum wage was even on the ballot. What do you think that this is saying about, we're seeing right now the results for 66% tonight
victory.
against 34. Yeah, huge. What do you think that's saying about how people feel about economics here in the state of Arkansas?
Well, it's ironic because this is something that Democrats tended to support, whereas some of the Republican candidates were not in favor of this, or they were certainly reluctant to support it. But I think it's an indication that there's a recognition in Arkansas that the minimum wage is very low and that many people are struggling economically, and that this is something that might help out for many families across the state.
So more or less, this may have been by the Democrats a way to get voters out, and
that was the assumption that this would be something that might attract people who are inclined to vote for Democrats. But obviously, it didn't turn out the way they might have hoped that it would, or certainly did hope that it would.
Yeah, but a large margin there. I mean, one of the largest margins we're seeing right now.
Yeah, it's a very, very significant victory. I think probably in the final analysis, it will be the largest margin of anything that was on the ballot.
But $8.50 still kind of keeping us below where a lot of other people are.
We're still, that's right. We're still in the lower ranks when it comes to minimum wage.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Purvis. We appreciate it. And as we head to another break, take a look at some more results from races around Northwest Arkansas right now. We'll be back in just a few minutes.